What does your favorite team need heading into the 2023 offseason? Well, I've got you covered here. I use PFF and a little bit of creative liberty to help determine the top 3 needs for every NFC team. And I guess with that, let's just go ahead and dive right into this. So for the Arizona Cardinals, you have offensive line, quarterback, or cornerback, and edge. Quarterback could use a little help depending on what happens with Kyler Murray. You don't really got a solid backup for him heading into next year. But corner, you don't really have that strong of a defense. And same thing with your edge rushers, your offensive line. Murray's having to run for his life. You need to give him help there, and then you'll be good again. Especially with J.J. Watt retiring, though, you do need an edge. For the Atlanta Falcons, you have wide receiver, linebacker, and edge. For the Falcons, wide receiver's really been a bit of a struggle. You have a solid tight end. I think it's Kyle Pitts. You don't really got a big name wide receiver, though, for Desmond Ridder. Give him a good name wide receiver, big name wide receiver. You'll be good. And also build up the team around him. Build up the linebacker, build up the edge. Your defense will be looking fine. The offensive line's all right, so you should be good there. But the Falcons are looking to compete. For the Carolina Panthers, you need quarterback, offensive line, and running back. Running back is pretty obvious since CMC left to the Niners. You don't got a running game. Offensive line, your quarterback is going to struggle no matter who they are if you don't got a good offensive line. And quarterback, pretty obvious. The Panthers have been in a quarterback carousel for years. Ever since Cam left the first time, they've been struggling. So you're going to need a little help there at quarterback, especially for Frank Reich. They're probably going to get a solid quarterback at that point because he's probably tired of dealing with rotational quarterbacks. For the Chicago Bears, you need offensive line, edge, and linebacker help. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, edge and linebacker, you don't really got a big rusher, especially with Khalil Mack gone years ago. You haven't really filled that void. You're going to need to fill that void, get a big rusher. In offensive line, you can't have Justin Fields running for his life. That's what teams don't understand. You can't have your quarterbacks running for their life. They need an offensive line. For the Dallas Cowboys, you need wide receiver, defensive tackle, and cornerback. Wide receiver, you got CeeDee Lamb, and then, who else? I was about to say Tony Pollard, but he's number 1, a running back, and number 2, he's a free agent who might not come back. You don't really have a big name wide receiver other than CeeDee Lamb, though, that I could think of offhand. Defensive tackle, you don't really got as strong a rush game apart from like Micah Parsons. And yeah, cornerback, you're going to need some help. Trayvon Diggs had one breakout year. He was all right this year from what I saw. For the Detroit Lions, you need cornerback, linebacker, and defensive tackle. Now, really you're looking at that defense because the defense was the breaking point for the Lions this year. They would have made the playoffs. They would have been a 10, 12-win team had they have had a solid defense. So if they can build that defense, the Lions will be top of that division next year. Mark my words. For the Green Bay Packers, you got wide receiver, edge, and linebacker. Now the Packers, wide receivers been pretty obvious. Aaron Rodgers, hasn't had wide receivers in a couple of years. He's tired of it. You need to draft him a wide receiver. If Rodgers leaves, you might be looking at a quarterback because I'm not sold on Jordan Love just yet. But assuming Rodgers stays, you're looking at wide receiver. And on the defensive side of the ball, you don't really have much of a defensive line. Build up that defensive line with young stud pass rushers. You'll be fine. For the Los Angeles Rams, we need offensive line, safety, and edge help big time. Taylor Rapp is all right, but you don't really got another strong name safety. Offensive line, you haven't filled the void since Whitworth left and a couple others left last year. You have been struggling. That was your weak point on the offense, was the offensive line. And yeah, edge, you don't really have much of a rushing attack. You had Von Miller and Aaron Donald last year, but now you're just down to Aaron Donald, assuming he doesn't retire. But I'm assuming he's not, and you're gonna need help for Aaron Donald. I mean, Donald and Sue was a really dominant duo. Donald and Miller was a dominant duo. If you could bring in a big name defensive line or a defensive rusher, you'll be good. For the Minnesota Vikings, you have cornerback, linebacker, and defensive tackle. Now, cornerback, you're going to need a bigger name quarterback. You don't really got as strong of a big name corner. I think one of your top corners is also leaving. I think Patrick Peterson, possibly leaving in free agency if the Vikings don't retain him. Defensive tackle, you don't really got much of a defensive line. You need to build up that defensive line to get to the quarterback, get your pressure. That's what I did not see out of the Vikings this year. For the New Orleans Saints, you need quarterback, cornerback, and defensive tackle. Now, quarterback, you didn't really have a strong quarterback game, but you still played all right. Get a new quarterback in there, young guy, good prospect, you'll be fine. Cornerback, build up that defense a little bit. And defensive tackle, same thing. You don't got a big name rusher. Try to get a big name rusher to have a new dominant force in that defensive line to get to the quarterback. For the New York Giants, you need wide receiver, linebackers, and tight end help. Now, tight end, wide receiver, same thing. You need passing targets for Daniel Jones. He doesn't have targets. The only target he has is Saquon Barkley if you really think about it. So bring in a big name tight end, bring in a big name wide receiver, draft one in the draft, and you'll be strong. You'll see Daniel Jones will have an actual good target. Brian Gable has done a really good job on limiting his turnovers and ball controls and keeping his ball control skills up there. And linebacker, a little bit of defensive help wouldn't help there. You really didn't have much on the defensive line over the middle, so get that help and you'll be fine. Now for the Philadelphia Eagles, you need safety, offensive line, and wide receiver help. Wide receiver, not so much since you got A.J. Brown. Safety, you could use a little bit of extra help in that back end. That's where you have a tendency to get burnt. Offensive line, it wouldn't hurt. It's hard for this team because they are so dominant and so complete. But offensive line, never hurts anyone. For the San Francisco 49ers, you have offensive line, defensive tackle, and cornerback. Now, for the Niners, you don't really got a big name cornerback as much. Offensive line, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to need help. You had 4 quarterbacks go down this year. You had 4 quarterbacks go down this year. You almost had Christian McCaffrey playing quarterback, which would have been a disaster. So, I'm not sure if it's the training or if it's the offensive line, but if you can build that offensive line, protect your quarterback, you should be fine. Defensive line, Nick Bosa could use some help. But even if not, you'll still be dominant. For the Seattle Seahawks, you need defensive tackle help, edge help, and offensive line help. Offensive line, Geno had a pretty solid year. Give him a slightly better offensive line, and you could be looking at a dominant Geno Smith next year if the Seahawks retain him. And defensive tackle and edge, same thing. You need more rushers. You lost Bobby Wagner. You don't got a big name rusher anymore. You need to get a new one in there to be dominant in a game record. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you need quarterback, offensive line, and edge help. Quarterback, Tom Brady retired. He's done. He was already a free agent anyway. Offensive line, you really need to help whoever's going to be quarterback in that situation, in that mess. And edge, you don't really got a big, strong edge rusher. I'm not sure if Ndamukong Suh is still there, but even if he is, you're still going to need help with him because he's not as dominant as he once was. For the Washington Commanders, you need quarterback, offensive line, and linebacker help. Now, linebacker, you didn't really have much over the middle. Get a little bit of help over the middle. You'll be fine. Quarterback and offensive line, hand in hand. You need an offensive line for your quarterback, and your quarterback play was a mess this year. Taylor Heineke is not going to take you to the promised land, nor is Carson Wentz, so you need that help. Get a young quarterback, get a good quarterback, and you will be competing next year. And I guess that'll do it for the NFC. If you guys did like, don't forget to smash like. If you're still around, why not hit that subscribe button because you probably enjoy our content. And over here, there should be the AFC team draft needs. If you haven't clicked it, go ahead and give it a watch, see what I say about the AFC teams. Also, especially if your favorite team is in the AFC. And I guess with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow for streaming coverage of the Pro Bowl flag football game. Peace out and have a good one.